Banker Mark Stegbauer once told me, do the best work you can do in the amount of time you have. And those are smart words to live by if you're going to be in the comic book business, because time is always a factor. I'm almost doing the same thing I'm doing in the rocks in the third panel, as I'm doing a lot of close parallel double lines. It's a stylistic thing, but it can be used in any rough texture, even monster skin. I'm going to thicken up some of the lines as it goes into this black area on his left arm here. The drop off of the white going into the black was a little too sudden, so I'm going to feather some of those lines. It's a real subtle touch. This may seem quite boring, and let me tell you it is, but that's what you get paid to do. In this case, I'm not getting paid for this at all. I'm under deadline, I'm going to get fired, and I'm not going to get paid. What a raw deal. No, I'm just trying to show you practical inking in the business. See, more lines in his arms. This might take a while. See, now right here I'm doing feathering from the blacks out. Now, I don't recommend that as a way to learn, but I just kind of know when I can get away with doing that. I've done it enough to be able to pull it off most of the time. Now this is the underlighting of the leg, not the main source of light. So I'm just going to do a series of lines here, and I'm getting thinner and thinner as I get out more, because you want to convey some depth. So that line is, it's almost non-existent, but you want to get the lines closer to the blacks, obviously a little thicker, to show a gradated effect. A couple more texturing on the back of the hand here, some tick marks, I'll add to it. Knuckle here on the thumb. Tick marks, there we go. Now I'm going to work on the facial area here. More on the front of the face. I'm going to do more teeth separations here. Don't be afraid to separate all the teeth if it's on a monster or some guy who's meant to be ugly. If you separate all the teeth on a face that's meant to be attractive, that really doesn't do a lot of good. For instance, I don't outline all the teeth on the female face, because that would be too distracting. It would take away from the softness of her face. Do a couple of veins. When you're doing veins, remember, one side is always thicker line, another side is thin, so it makes it look like it's popping out from the hand. Just keep in mind that you keep that one side consistently thick and one side consistently thin. If the veins squiggle all over the place, you got to keep in mind the secondary light source from above. Therefore, you thicken the bottom parts of the vein too. I'm going to continue this smoke down a little bit past here. I don't know why. There we go. No trace in that. Alright, I'm going to do some work up here on the explosion. So it's a combination of kind of like a smoke-like contour and a series of feathering to soften up its look. I'll make some parts of the smoke go in front of other billowy parts of the smoke. You don't want to mess around too much with that though, it's in the background. So you don't want to draw attention to it too much. Right here you want to kind of like a fancy effect there for part of the explosion, like a gradated effect with feathering. I'm just going to basically use a series of double-ended tapered lines. Add some more speckles and rubble? Sure, why not? I'm going to go into the feathering. He didn't draw it all the way around, so I'll do it around where he indicated, and I might throw a couple extra right there just to make it kind of consistent. So these are double-ended tapers, going thin to thick to thin, all in succession to each other. And at some points, I'm getting so thick that they're actually touching each other in the middle. Sometimes if the pencil lines are so dark, it's hard to see how good your feathering and your line work technique is. So we'll see how good that looks after I erase it, because the ink is blending into the pencil somewhat. I'm going to throw a few more on this side just to kind of keep it consistent. Seems to be another explosion down here. Seems to have more of the feathering line work here. Doesn't have much of the cloudy puffiness. I'm getting so thick in the middle of each line that's touching each other, creating a black part in the middle and nicely fades out on either side of the black area. Unfortunately, I don't get paid by the line, yet my job is on the line. What's up with that? That's good. I'll throw in some feathering later to blend it into the blacks more. But I got the basic outline down. Now I'm going to ink the hero. I'm going to start with the energy surrounding his hands. In the third panel, Doug indicated a thicker outline for the energy surrounding his hands. So I'm going to keep that same theme here, but I'm also going to add to it. I'm going to actually surround it with smaller lines following the same direction, but just kind of haphazardly touching the lines, intersecting, not really following the exact form of the thicker line. When you have extreme thick lines or blacks next to extreme thin lines, it gives a really interesting look, as opposed to lines that generally are more or less the same thickness. Now this figure is really small, except for the black areas. Keep the rest of the lines very light and small. There's not much room for line variation when you're inking this small, so don't worry too much about making thin and thick lines and where you should make them thin and thick. Just keep it more or less all thin. Remember, these pages we shrunk down. Smaller doesn't necessarily mean messier though. Still trying to be fairly clean. I blackened in this one hand, but I'm going to keep it consistent and do the same thing, just for consistency's sake. Now, this is a perfect example on why probably better to use a pen, but I'm just crazy. Tiny little feather marks to indicate hair, just a couple lines, don't need to do too much. Some specks and rubble, shrapnel, explosion. Small explosion in the back. Not going to do any hatching or cross hatching or feathering on the contours. Squiggle the lines to indicate that it's there. I'm going to take a quick break. If you want to be a pro inker, you got to have a strong back. A strong back means balance at the table. Balance means nice, consistent lines, especially feathering. Here we go. Ah. 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 Ah.
You can do it. One more.
Ah. 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 Now we're moving on to the second panel. The next basic set of lines here that we need to cover. Some cheekbone. The push and pull line right there. Why? Just because it looks cool. The push and pull line is where it's blunt on the ends. And it kind of indicates almost like a quick gestural stroke. I'll elaborate later. Some thinner folds on the lower area under the eye, on the lower eyelid. Let's see here. We could take a circular template and do his right eye. I'm going to do it with the brush. I recommend using a template though, especially for you beginning inkers, because you do want to keep that pretty round. There we go. Slight hint of an eyelash, maybe two. Don't make it too long. Good enough. So most of the lines within the face now are just mostly rendering lines. I'll just go ahead and do a few of those. A lot of feathering. When you get a shot this big, tends to be more lines on the feathering side. Let's do some of that feathering right now. So here we go on his left side. A couple intersecting ones right here on his forehead. Now I'm going to go thick, thinner, 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 thin. So it shows a little progression of dark to light. Feathering here. And up here. It might be more beneficial to actually use the bigger brush because it can hold more ink. You can drag it out a little farther and longer than such a small brush that doesn't use a lot of ink. I tend to have a little bit more control with a small brush, but this will do fine. No, don't even think about it, just keep laying them down. Another set right here, and it looks like it gets gradually longer as I go along here. Gotta keep in mind to start feathering out a little further with each line. But now I'm at the end, so it doesn't matter. Do a double line on the cheekbone here. Thin double-ended tapers. One ended up being a little thicker. A really thin line here for the upper lip. On the male, same philosophy as the bottom lip. Don't want to emphasize that line too much. There we go. Good enough for now. I'm going to move to the chin and do some of the rendering there, some of the feathering. I'm rendering here on the neck tendons and veins, and I'll leave the circular shapes alone. Let's move on to the third panel. Now it's back to the monster skin, my favorite. Same approach as in first panel, it's just that we're doing it on a smaller scale now. Just quickly finding lines that are going generally in the same direction, just whipping right through just to keep the brush moving while I've got that directional groove going in my hand control here. So how long should an inked page take? That's a good question. It just really depends on how much you have to ink, how fast you are, how well you work under pressure, and how good you are with your tools. The average standard in the comic book industry is to do 1 page a day. If you can do more, great. If you can't do a page a day, just keep at it until you can, because I don't think many editors will have much work for you if you can't do a page a day. They have deadlines too. Some pages, depending on the penciler style, can take literally a couple hours. I think that's the fastest I've ever inked 1 page is 2 hours, but it was so simple. It was a page during JLA. I believe the very last page of the Trial by Fire arc, written by Joe Kelly, and with artwork by Doug and myself. The longest I ever spent on a page was probably one of my first few batches of pages I got when I broke in, because I was just so terribly slow. I think I took almost 20 hours on one page. Of course, you get a standard page rate, so the faster you can get the work done, the more money you will make. If you drag it out too long, where you're spending 20 hours a page, and you divide up your page rate by the number of hours you spent, it's not going to turn up too good. You might as well just get another job flipping burgers. You get free food on top of that too. Always love free food. Sometimes you can use texture to replace traditional hatching cross-hatching. It's kind of been shown in the first panel actually, and I'm kind of doing it again right here. Instead of hatching cross-hatching, just use texture and saturate it more for darker areas and light areas. You just don't put as much ink in. For instance, I'm putting a lot of tick marks and stuff to where the light fades away, much more texture there. And when it gets into the light, I'm using less texture, and some spots no texture. For instance, the right trapezius muscle right here of the monster is exposed right there into the light. There's really not any lines in there. You don't need to go into texture every single area that is visible on the monster. Work on his right arm a bit here. I should have used the pen for this. I grip the brush pretty hard when I ink. I don't know why. Some people have a light grip. I have a very heavy grip. Just gotta learn to relax more. Work on the face of the monster here. A little bit of saliva and spittle coming from his mouth. Don't need to make that too thick. Throw some dots in tiny little circles, some half circles. Really adds to the effect, the drama. I'm gonna blunt off the corner of his mouth here just a tad. Too pointy, I thought. Plus it's more consistent with the first panel. Some more texture on the shoulders. Okay, the other side of the back here, gotten quite a bit done. Just with brushes alone, as you can see. There's really no need to take it this far with a brush if you don't want to. You know, I just do it because I still have the brush in my hand, and why not? Pen is not necessarily easier for me, so that's why it doesn't really bother me either way. But my brush is starting to dry out, so I'm going to wrap up this monster and rinse out the brush again, and then start on the female character in the third panel as she's being tossed into the background by the monster. I think that'll do for now as I wash my brush and make it all fresh for the female character in the third panel. Hey, what's going on, Rose?
What's up?
Not too much, just washing my brush. What are you doing?
I'm just taking a bath, you know, as usual.
Looks like you're putting on makeup.
Yeah.
While you're taking a bath?
Mm-hmm.
Want to wash off?
No.
Yes. So I'm going to get ready to ink the woman in the third panel here. We're going to get in pretty tight. It's a very small character. I'm using the small brush. Nice point on the brush, and I'm going to start with her hand. Sometimes I'll throw in fingernails if Doug hasn't drawn them in. I'm not going to worry about it here. At this point, it's so small, it's going to be reduced anyway. Now moving to her leg. There, I'm going to ink her shorts, keeping the interior lines quite thin. Might add some loopholes for the belt later. I didn't draw that in. We'll see if I feel like it, I'll add it in. The back pockets. Looks like a little line here indicating maybe the hip bone. Kind of looks sexy. I'm going to proceed and do the stripes on her tube top. So keeping the lines very thin on the tube top, almost non-existent. You don't want in any way for these lines to stand out. Kind of following the form. There's a little dip there in her back. Keep that in mind when I'm inking the lines to follow the form of her back. I don't know why Doug blackened some of these stripes in, because there are no thick stripes or bands across the tube top in the first panel, so I think it was just a little minor error. And she's come along looking nice and sexy. Don't worry, girls, you're sexy too. Sometimes they can be so jealous. Just drawings. Okay, now some feathering. There are a series of lines that come out that go practically from one end of the hair to the root. I'm going to do the line fairly thin, and I'm going to thicken it up as I get closer to the black, almost like a long feather line. Careful not to make your feathering too small, because you won't be able to see it when it gets reduced. And when you do this for a while, you're used to the size that you work at, and then you're used to the way it looks when it's reduced in print, then you can have a good idea of how small to make things or how big to make things. Gotta connect it very carefully so it looks seamless, like you never even broke the line, like right here. Just gonna continue that direction. Right here too. Now, as in the first panel with her hair, I'm just gonna take the brush, I'm just gonna flick out some stray hairs, just for added effect. Since the contour on the light part of the hair has already been established, I don't want to flick any hairs out from there, but you can do it from the black areas. I'm going to actually do some of the detailing on her face. Really cartoony and simple. Don't render any hairs from the eyelash at this point. Outline of her face. Might as well do the lips while I'm at it. Again, probably more practical to do with a pen. Now, we are back to the male hero. So we're going to ink him up now with a small brush. I'm going to start with his hair. And his hair seems to have some feathering in it to indicate not only hair, but motion and direction of him coming at the monster. So I'm going to feather it in that direction. There you go. That kind of looks cool, I guess. Alright, some very fine detailing here in the face, because you've got the robotic eyepiece, you've got some wrinkles in the face. What more can I say other than just take your time, be clean, be careful, because the details are smaller and closer together. I used a broken line on the teeth to separate the upper and lower teeth. I don't know why. Then I just didn't feel like drawing one solid line to separate the teeth. Alright, now I'm going to do some brushwork in his body, starting with the neck area. So with the same philosophy as the second panel with the neck area, I'm going to draw it right up to the neckline that separates the costume from the skin. And then any lines that continue through that, I'm actually going to leave a small break to indicate a little bit of an edge to the separation of costume and skin. Of course, some inkers will actually draw the line going through, and then they'll come in afterwards with white ink and make a little break. I'm much too lazy to do that, so I just do it as I'm inking. Line there up to the edge of the costume, break, continue on with the line. Same up here, break, continue on. Time to do the collarbone now. So let me get this muscle over here. With light sources this close to him and on either side, the center part of him would probably be more dark, like a dark band of shadow right down the center. But then again, that might not happen with the light coming from above. I mean, you can drive yourself nuts just thinking of how light's going to affect, especially when you have multiple light sources with different intensities. In this case, especially with the time constraint that I am under, I'm not going to worry about it. I will trust Doug with his pencil lines. He's got the general idea down anyway. Some rendering coming from the center of the abs and the sternum and the pecs. This isn't high-tech medical illustration. This is just comic book illustration. Just get your point across. For some reason, I just threw in an extra rib muscle. I don't know why, because I felt like it. The power of the ink. Now, lines that are meant for design, like for instance, say on a flat surface like paper, or in this case, a costume, no real need to do different line variations. It's supposed to be just design on a costume. Now, I'm assuming those lines indicate bands of a different color from the rest of the costume. They don't really have a form on its own. There's no need to go nuts with line weights on those. They just indicate costume design. Of course, I want to follow the form of the musculature. I'm going to focus on the energy blasts. In the first panel, what I did is that I had one main thick outline, and then I enveloped it with a series of smaller lines haphazardly. I want to keep that consistent here. I'm going to do the same thing. So we already have our bold, thick lines around